What's up, you friggin' geniuses? So in this video, I'm gonna give you an introduction into rates. All right, so what is a rate? Well, a rate is simply used to compare two quantities that have different units, okay? And rates are normally written as something per something, okay? Now, I know this is super vague, but we're gonna do an example and then it's gonna make a lot of sense. But one thing I wanna point out real quick is whenever you see this word, per, that means you're talking about rates. So don't get that confused or mixed up with ratios, right? Those are kind of different. So whenever you're talking about rates, you're always going to see this word right here, per. Now, let's jump into our first example. Okay, so here the problem says, my friend Alex needs a date to prom, okay? He asked out 50 girls in the past hour, and they all turned him down and said no. Okay, so the question here is, what is Alex's strikeout rate? Or in other words, how quickly or how often did he get turned down? Okay, so now there's two different ways you can kind of go about solving this problem. So the first one is, okay, so remember, your answers are written as something per something, right? So normally this first something is some sort of quantity, okay? And then this second something is normally a unit of time. Okay, so for this problem, the quantity that we're talking about right here would be the girls, right? So 50 girls. So I would write 50 girls, okay? And then I told you this second something is normally a unit of time, okay? But if you read through the problem, it says he asked 50 girls in the past hour. So we're talking about just 1 hour right here, right? So then we would put 1 hour over here. So if we go back to the question, it says, what is Alex's strikeout rate? So his strikeout rate would be 50 girls per hour, okay? That's how often he's striking out with asking these girls out. Now, the second way you can kind of go about solving these problems is noticing a very, very subtle word. And that word is in. So whenever you see the word in, you can kind of just cross it out and replace it with per, right? Our very important word up here. Okay, so instead of in, put per. And then reread your problem. So Alex needs a date to prom. He asked 50 girls per the past hour. Okay, so this is another way I can get the answer, right? Because this is also telling me the rate. 50 girls per hour. Okay, so you would come to the same answer right here, 50 girls per hour. So now that we have our answer, one other thing I want to add to this is you can rewrite your answer a little bit as a fraction. Okay, so if you wanted to write your answer as a fraction, you would just put your first something in the top part of your fraction. So I'll write that, girls. So this is the top part of the fraction. And then the second something, which I told you is normally a unit of time, that would go in the bottom, okay? So hour, right here. And then your 50, or whatever number you have, would just come out here in the front. Okay, and you would still read this the same way. So this would be 50 girls per hour, okay? This fraction bar, whenever you see this fraction bar, another way you can read that is by saying the word per. Okay, so that's why here I have girls per hour. Or if you wanted to put this number in your fraction, you could do that. Instead of putting it out front, if you wanted to put it in your fraction, you would put it in the top, okay? So then you would read this as 50 girls per hour. Okay, now one last thing I want to do is change up my problem up here a little bit. So what if I changed my time to 2 hours? So now it says he asked out 50 girls in the past 2 hours, and they still all said no. So how would that change my rate? Well, remember, there's two ways to solve for the rate, right? So first of all, you just write something per something, and then the first something is the quantity that you're talking about. So we're still talking about 50 girls, right? So that doesn't change. But up here, instead of having 1 hour, I would have 2 hours. So now my rate is 50 girls per 2 hours. So I'm going to write that down here as a fraction. So 50 girls per 2 hours. Okay, so this would be the new rate. But one thing I wanted to point out here is that we can actually reduce this fraction, okay, because both of these numbers are divisible by 2, right? So in order to reduce this, I'm going to divide by 2 on the top and divide by 2 on the bottom, okay? So what's 50 divided by 2? Well, that's 25, okay? And that's going to go over 2 divided by 2, which is just 1. So then I reduced my numbers here, but my units remain the same, okay? So I have girls on top, hours on the bottom, okay? So girls up here and hours down here. Okay, and one thing about rates is whenever you have a 1 in the denominator, you can actually just hide that. So instead of saying 25 girls per 1 hour, you would just say 25 girls per hour, and it still means the exact same thing. So I want to move on to just a couple quick examples that you're more likely to see. Okay, so this top problem says, you drove 100 miles in 4 hours. And then the question is, what was your rate? Okay, well, if you remember the very subtle way of solving these problems, remember all you have to look for is this word right here, in. Okay, and then all you do is just cross it out real quick and replace it with per. Okay, so then just read your problem again. So it says, you drove 100 miles per 4 hours. Okay, and I'll write that as a fraction down here. 100 miles per 4 hours. Okay, that was your rate. Now, if you notice something, we can also reduce this fraction, right? 100 over 4. How can we reduce that? Well, both numbers are divisible by 4. Okay, so I can divide the top by 4 and I can divide the bottom by 4. Okay, so what's 100 divided by 4? Well, that's equal to 25. Okay, and then what's 4 divided by 4? That's just 1. And then remember, your units stay the same. So we have miles on top, and hours on the bottom. Okay, and if you remember, whenever you have a 1 in the denominator, you can just get rid of it, right? Okay, so then your final rate right here would be 25 miles per hour. Okay, now let's do one more example. So down here it says, you earned $246 in 6 hours. What was your rate? Or in other words, what was your pay rate? Well, again, I noticed that I have the word in right here, right? So I'm just going to cross that out and put per. Okay, so your rate was $246 per 6 hours. Okay, and then again, I'm going to write it as a fraction over here, $246, right, per 6 hours. Okay, now can we reduce this anymore? Well, let's see. Let's try to divide 6 into 246. Okay, so 6 goes into, doesn't go into 2, but it does go into 24 4 times, right? Exactly 4 times. And then 6 goes into 6 exactly 1 time. So since 6 went exactly into 24 and 6, I know I have no remainders. So then my final answer would just be 41. Okay, and let me actually move this to the side over here. Now 6 divides evenly into 246, right? So that means the top and bottom are both divisible by 6. Okay, so if we reduced this, 246 divided by 6, like we saw, is exactly 41. So 41, and then that's going to go over 6 divided by 6, which is just 1, right? But again, when you get a 1 in the denominator, you don't have to write it. But you do have to put the units, right? So hours will just be hour, right? 1 hour. And then dollars still at the top. Okay, so your final answer over here would be $41 per hour. All right, guys, so that is your introduction into rates. So I hope the examples were helpful. If they were, definitely leave a thumbs up down below. And if you still have any questions or want to see any other examples, just let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to try and help you out. Also, there's a playlist attached at the end of the video, so if there's any other topics you need help with, definitely go check that out, and I'll see you there.